You're suggesting that I killed my wife. You're saying that I crushed her skull and that I shot her? How dare you? When I came home, there was a man in my house. I fought with this man. Whatever. He had a mechanical arm. You find this man. You find this man.
Welcome, everyone, to an edition of Let's Take 5, the podcast where we look at one of the greats of cinema and discuss their excellence and range. My name is Eric Martindale.
I'm Austin Luger.
And the reason I'm talking like this is because we are starting off our Harrison Ford 5, and we're talking about fucking Star Wars.
Are you trying to do Ford or just doing the Dolby sound?
I'm kind of doing Dolby sound. Okay. I'm doing Dolby sound trailer.
Okay.
You know, so we're covering Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, then we're continuing with Raiders of the Lost Ark, Witness, The Fugitive, and we're wrapping up with Blade Runner 2049. Is that pretty good?
Yeah.
Okay, so, you know, the reason I'm leading in this way, unbeknownst to Austin's looking at me like I'm insane, is because it's Harrison Ford. It's got a poppy, right? It's got to have that, you know...
It's the likable gruff.
It's the likable gruff. It has, you know, a lot of trailer gusto, too, you know, a lot of fluff to it. And we're talking about Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. Now, the reason why we're talking about both these films is probably, and I was thinking in my head, I was like, let's do a Star Wars special because, you know, we're not going to be able to talk about the Star Wars films. Because we're never going to have a Carrie Fisher 5. We're never going to have a George Lucas 5. I mean, we could probably stretch that out if we count him as a producer.
We're one away from a Rian Johnson 5, though.
Well, I don't want to talk about Last Jedi.
Guest host.
So yeah, I mean, you can do that by yourself. And then, you know, we wouldn't have a Mark Hamill 5. Alec Guinness would only get one movie. Mm-hmm. So, like, there's a lot of, you know, stretching here and there that just wouldn't, you know, we might end up missing these films. Don't want to miss Star Wars. Don't want to miss The Empire Strikes Back because these are two of the best movies ever. And... let's add a little nugget on the end is we're not covering Return of the Jedi in this podcast because I want to say mutual, although I actually like the film quite a bit. Austin does not like the film. Return of the Jedi is not a good enough film to make the canon of our thesis of this entire podcast, right? So at least one person should love one of the films we're covering. I really, really, really like Return of the Jedi, but not enough to be a bulwark against Austin's dislike for it. But
I talked about it on the Immortals. Y'all can watch that one.
But it'll probably be inevitably talked about a little bit here, and of course we'll cover it in the wrap-up a little bit as well. So Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. And The Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars, we'll start off with that, is a movie about a farm boy space guy who gets hooked up in an adventure that's going to take him to shooting down laser pew-pews, blowing up the evil empire run by his father, Darth Vader. Everybody knows this.
But before we be clear, we'll spoil these two films. Let's not spoil like anyone that might still be in theaters right now. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. I won't spoil any of the films in theaters. No. Which one's in theaters?
Last Jedi?
Just Last Jedi's still out there. Okay. Yeah. Well, whatever. But, well, you know, I would say everyone and their brother saw that movie, so we wouldn't have to worry about it, but that's not true. Because
my brothers have now seen it. My parents have not.
I was going to say, it made significantly less money than the other ones. Anyway.
Less than Rogue One?
But they could make about as much as Rogue One. Made less than, I was counting, Force Awakens, which made more money than anything in movie history.
Yeah.
So anyway, Star Wars has this character in it called Han Solo, which is about as famous as Jesus. If you've heard of Han Solo... if you heard of Jesus, you've heard of Han Solo. I mean, what? Can I not say that?
No, I'm just worried this might be the most redundant podcast of all time.
Well, no, because I was just saying, you know, John Lennon said we're as popular as Jesus, and like, you know, that ruined his. Obviously didn't ruin his career, but like people got really offended by that. Oh my God. We just double ruined our podcast. So anyway, so let's talk about Han Solo in this movie. So what I love about Harrison Ford in this movie, what I love about Harrison Ford in general is Harrison Ford sometimes cares about the movies he's in. He sometimes does not. Okay. When he cares, he's a very competent actor. And he has brought forth some of the most famous characters of all time, i.e. Han Solo, and of course Indiana Jones.
And for some, Rick Deckard.
And I was going to say, and for some people, Deckard. Sometimes he does not care. And unfortunately, that's probably more frequent. But when he does, he's awesome. And in this movie, he's just absolutely awesome as Han Solo.
So I want to talk to you because you're an actor. Quite a good actor.
Formerly.
You still remember how it works.
Yeah.
Because Harrison Ford was often quoted about kind of being in Star Wars, particularly the first one, A New Hope, and where he was... He mocked the script in a bit because he goes, it takes a really certain kind of actor to be able to say George Lucas's lines. Mm-hmm. And they are dense in a way that's not deep, some of these lines. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes they are...
That's a great...
bit... sometimes they're a little bit gibberish. Sometimes they don't actually make a lot of, like, emotional sense because Lucas is sometimes more just in world building than, like, true humanity. That said, none of that happens when you watch New Hope because everyone just kind of pulled it off so organically. And to me, the thing that, like, why I'm not an actor at all is that I can read my own words in a speech or whatever because I can speak my own voice. Harrison Ford managed to pull off dialogue that some other actors found to be, you don't even know how to say it, and made it so effortlessly. So, what do you do when you look at a script and have to now change the way you speak and even like to form a sentence?
Yeah, no, I mean George Lucas definitely wrote unnecessarily like Shakespeare in a sense but without the beautiful language.
Right.
What I mean is it would feel heightened and it would be extraordinarily dense, which I think is a word you used, but it wouldn't have the substance to warrant how dense it was, right? But I think that's become more famous, and that quote specifically you're referring to has been more famous in a prequel, a post-prequel society.
Because you watched fantastic actors not pull it off.
Right. And fail miserably. I mean, the biggest example of that is Natalie Portman, who's just horrendous.
Great actor.
But she's a fantastic actress.
Terrible in that. Ian McGregor mostly pulls it off.
Yeah, he does mostly pull it off. I think that, but Natalie Portman, I feel like, was even worse because she's got to fall in love.
Oh, with a child who can't act. And then an
adult who can't act. I was going to say. So, yeah, I mean, you have, and you know, that's not 100% fair to Hayden Christensen because I've seen him in films where he's been okay.
Shattered Glass, he's great.
Shattered Glass, right.
Jake Lloyd does not have an example to defend him.
And we are 0 degrees of separation, but Jack, I'm 1 degree of separation. You know Jake Lloyd.
I don't know.
You went to school with him.
Yeah, I passed him in the hall.
Okay, all right. Well, that's the last we'll talk about.
We both know someone who actually hung out with him.
Well, Alex hung out with him.
Yeah.
Okay, so our guest on the comic book wrap-up episode,
that's true.
Alex Dunning, is friends with Jake Lloyd, or at a time was.
I feel like we're outing him.
I know. It feels weird.
There's no way he's talked to him in the past 10 years, right?
Oh, no, because remember he would have Bo, he would give the phone to Bo to call him on his birthday just so he could say happy birthday to him just because he was Darth Vader.
Bo, our guest on the Clockwork Orange episode.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Thank God I didn't listen to this.
Yeah, well,
Jake.
Well, it's this weird thing that Jake Lloyd went to college or high school in Indiana, like really randomly. You wouldn't think that would be a thing, and he went to Carmel High School, which is a very, very big high school in Indiana. So getting back to what we were talking about here. Yeah, okay, so the characters are archetypes, right? Like, you know, ultimately, and the reason why that's hidden so well and it works so well is because people hadn't seen it done in this type of setting like this before. So you have the farm boy, but farm boy is kind of like a weird thing to sort of do in space. We haven't had that before, you know, so it ends up being a new situation for an old archetype. You have a princess. Right, I understand that there were serials and stuff like that existed before that, but not on the magnitude of this.
I wasn't thinking back to it because it's a space opera. It's very much in space. We see spaceships, we see planets, and yet, even though we know Tatooine is an alien world, there is so much humanity in every part of it that you almost don't see the archetypes. Like, you don't think he's an alien farmer. You kind of just think he's a farmer. That's it. And that to me is something so interesting about all of this, where they all just kind of play their part without winking, which is huge. And to do it with such a natural flow and excitement and a focus on true adventure and excitement and kind of achieving those goals that are often, Robin Hood saving the girl kind of thing, but it all works thanks to, weirdly, everyone not fucking up.
Yeah, well, with Harrison Ford in particular, you have, I would say in a lot of ways, that's kind of the hardest role in the film, because you mentioned the not winking. Well, the hardest role to, I think, not wink here is Harrison Ford, because his character doesn't carry the majesty of a Princess Leia or a Darth Vader that just, or Peter Cushing's character as Grand Moff Tarkin, or even Obi-Wan Kenobi, this grand wizard. Obi-Wan's essentially Gandalf. That's what he is. He's just like the hotshot flyboy.
He wears a vest. His best friend's a teddy bear.
Right. His best friend's a walking dog bear, and it's that's the guy you'd worry about winking, right? But what he ends up amounting to, though, even in a kind of a similar way, because they're both campy in similar ways, is that he kind of ends up being an American sort of James Bond, in a lot of different ways. Obviously they're very, very different, and it's almost hard to argue the Star Wars as being American because it's such an international hit and success with so many different people that worked on it. But
especially since Indiana Jones was literally made to be an American James Bond. When I think Spielberg wanted to make a Bond film, they said no. He goes, I can just make my own thing.
Yeah.
And yet Han Solo feels more Bond-like, even though he is by nature a rogue, and James Bond isn't.
Yeah, he's got the ships, he's got the cool lines, he's got the cool gun, he gets the girl, there's these elements in it, and from that first get-go, when he sits down with across from Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker, and he's like, let's talk about what's going on here, what do you need? Well, we need to smuggle this stuff, and he's like, okay, well, how much you going to pay me? And he ends up ripping him off on the price. And it's this guy's cool, and then this bounty hunter tries to bring him in. He kills him. As he walks past the bartender, he flips him a credit chip and says, for the mess. He has it's this cool thing that he inhabits. And then you think that's just going to be it. You see him, be very negative towards the ideas of the Force, and then he's always in it for the money. He's only in it for the money. And then when he gets to the Death Star and they get there, something incredible happens. He decides he's actually a coward and doesn't want to leave where he's at.
Yeah.
He totally flips. It's one of the funniest things. It's you just said you wanted to leave. He was like, yeah, but I'm marching in the detention area. That's not what I had in mind. I'm not going to do that. He's like, well, but they're going to kill her. Well, better her than me. Yeah. It's this huge character twist that you wouldn't have thought happened, and then remarkably, and I'm not talking about Han Solo, I'm talking about Harrison Ford in general. He gets hilarious. From the beginning of the film, he's not jovial or joking. He's very, very serious. He needs money to pay off a debt on his head, and then when he gets to the Death Star, he is hilarious. I'm not going anywhere. He has that. And then he's just shooting things. And then he, I don't know what to say to this guy on the phone. He's been so cool the whole film until he has to speak to someone and be undercover. And he's like, everything's fine.
That has to be ad-libbed, right?
It's hilarious.
It's amazing.
And he totally ruins it. And then he does the only thing he knows how to do, which is just shoot it and blow it up. So you end up actually getting a level of depth with Han Solo that wasn't necessarily anticipated from the beginning, and then the tropes are allowed to breathe and they actually start to have some real humanity, because the key in humanity is humor.
Well, and I think what makes Harrison Ford so good in this role as well is because you're right, once they kind of get to the Death Star, even before that, as he's kind of questioning the Force, he could be the worst character in the world, where he's not acknowledging the plot of the film. You see that a lot in horror films where someone goes no, Freddy Krueger's dead. We killed him last film. He's definitely not back. Of course he's back. We're watching Nightmare on Elm Street 5. There's no movie if Freddy Krueger's not back. And he could have easily been I don't want to save the princess. No such thing as the Force. Get off my ship. Blah, blah, blah. But Harrison Ford is actually not a greedy actor. And he's very kind of happy to be in the back of a shot. And just kind of when he's first kind of in that Stormtrooper uniform, they're kind of in that little, like, smaller room where C-3PO is going to kind of run shop for a bit. He's just kind of lounging around. Like, everyone's like, oh, well, he's probably in this area. He's sitting down with his feet up, like, guys, like, we're fine. Well, he has to be sold to continue playing, like, the movie. Like, he's not a video game character. He's someone playing an arcade game going, put one more quarter in. Fine. Yeah. One more quarter.
You know, it's kind of funny that, and I just thought about this, but his first inclination when he's left alone with Luke right after Obi-Wan walks out of the room is to make fun of Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan walks out of the room, he turns to Luke and says, where did you dig up that old fossil? Like, it's like this immediate, like...
Because he's a hermit on one of the shittiest planets in the galaxy.
And part of him, what's great about it, and what's relieving about a character about that, is you're able to without winking to the audience, you are able to laugh at some of the absurdity in the film through the lens of Han Solo.
Sure.
So all of a sudden this American James Bond thing kind of goes out the window, and then he ends up adding a depth that you wouldn't necessarily have thought was there. And not that James Bond doesn't have depth. I mean, it's certainly expanded upon in the recent movies, in Casino Royale and Skyfall and whatnot. But
something else, like, I mean, he is cool when he's not doing cool things, right? I mean, he definitely shoots Greedo first. You know, he is trying to rip off an old man and a dumb kid. He is trying to get out of saving a princess. Doesn't care about all this things.
He owes people money.
Owes a lot of people money. Has a ship that everyone thinks is shitty. We now think is iconic. And we as a culture can never go back to the idea that it is shitty. So I think now the franchise has changed. Going, this is the coolest ship in the world. Because we can't unsee it.
Well, and that has great payoff in other features when it's like the Empire can't blow up this shitty ship.
Yeah.
It's like no matter how hard they try, this thing
keeps going.
And it keeps fucking them up.
But so, like, even like, so how did they get onto the ship? They do a really dumb faking an injury kind of thing. And his big first, like, real in the guts action scene is in a trash compactor.
Yeah.
And it's just... It's dumb in all the greatest ways.
Again, you know, you got the monster in the trash compactor. Clearly, everyone sees the monster. Luke says, "Did you see that?" And he goes, "What?" He was looking right at it.
Yeah.
He says, "What?" Again,
also they're standing in shit.
Yes, and it just really works. But through this, you end up, even when, you know, like I was talking with Austin before we started here. I mean, you have so many people now willing to go back and talk shit about the performances in the film when they talk about Leia and Luke and Han. And to me, I never saw it that way, because what ends up happening is it's such a genre piece, right? I mean, it's a 70s space opera, so I think that alludes itself to people like pointing fun and laughing at the performances or whatever, which probably they were doing then in a way they wouldn't do now, because genre films dominate about 90% of the actual money that's grossed at the box office now. But you end up right there in that moment in the trash compactor, and a little bit before that, you start to see this incredible chemistry and camaraderie with the characters, and chemistry from the actors arise between Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford that really rides strong from that movie to the end of Empire Strikes Back.
Sure.
And it does end in an Empire Strikes Back, because it does not, unfortunately, carry over to Return of the Jedi. I think Mark Hamill's good in Return of the Jedi. You do not. But I
don't think any of them are good in Return of the
Jedi.
But
regardless, he is separate from those two. Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill are together for longer parts of that film. And maybe Harrison Ford didn't care about Return of the Jedi.
And there are more drugs on set. But also, what's really cool about Harrison Ford, the way he acts with Carrie Fisher, especially in those early scenes, especially the trash compactor, is that the way that Luke gets him out of the room to continue to help him is just because, she's rich. You know, she's a princess. Rich. I'm sure her planet is still in one piece. We're fine. But there is something kind of great about the idea where he goes, like, he's now imagining the more common archetype of she's a princess tied up on the train track. It's going to be great. Get her out of the castle. Make some metaphors. And then no, she is more competent than both of them combined, and is frequently mad at them for thinking the getaway plan was the trash compactor that has a monster and it's closing on them.
Which is exactly what should happen, right? Because she has been involved in this fight with the Empire.
Sure.
Luke is a farm boy.
Yeah.
Han Solo is a gambler
Asshole.
scoundrel.
Yeah.
So
that... It's so much fun to watch Harrison Ford in a very still pleasant way. It's not watching anything like abusive on screen. He decides to kind of turn on Leia. Like, this is no longer fun. I thought she was just going to just like give me all her money. Stupid.
This is no longer fun.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, because it is like he thought like, oh, she's probably a stupid princess who'll give me all her money, and that would be great.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll marry someone stupid, leave her on a planet, take him. Like, this was his game plan. Now to find out that she has a personality and is way smarter than him annoys him.
Oh, it does. He does say something early in the film. Well, not early, but right after they meet, which is like, you had a plan for rescuing. Did you have a plan of getting us out of here? And he goes, he's the brain, sweetheart. He points to so like it's his deflection of guilt is also fun as it bounces off to Luke, who doesn't have a plan, and he does allude to something like, if I don't end up killing her, I think I'd like her. But he's also trying to show off. Again, there's so much fluffing up of the idea of Han Solo that's done by the audience, but in reality, there's so much of the fluffing of Han Solo done up in the first Star Wars, and this one, by Han Solo himself. When he charges at the stormtroopers, just to show off, get back to the ship.
Yeah.
Then he gets to the end, and there's 50 stormtroopers, and then he takes off running the other way. This works. I mean, this is great.
Well,
and there's a comedy element to Star Wars that is absent in the other films, which is done poorly in the prequels.
Oh, those are painfully unfunny.
And I love Empire. Empire's my favorite Star Wars film, one of my favorite films of all time. But it doesn't nail the humor like this does, and I think that there's a humor in this film that actually makes these films surprisingly accessible to people that haven't seen the films, even today, in particular because of through the lens of the Han Solo character.
Well, I think we'll get to Empire a little bit as we kind of keep going chronologically through these. I think there is some humor, just not a lot with Han Solo.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I think
with Solo.
Yoda is very funny.
Yes.
Once again, like the idea of Obi-Wan challenging expectations of who is your mentor kind of thing, yada yada.
And Return of the Jedi returns to humor as well. It's just, again, it's not done as well.
Sure. And so Harrison Ford also is something that's so fascinating in Star Wars because so many of them were just kind of rather untrained actors, except for Alec Guinness, one of the greatest actors alive at the moment, and Peter Cushing and such.
But Peter Cushing, famous for doing bad films.
Oh, God. But nailing it.
Yeah, but nailing it, right? How many Hammer Dracula films?
Oh, well, like 6?
I was going to say 8.
But he's Van Helsing.
I know, but he's Van Helsing.
He's so good at him.
I know he's not.
Also,
Christopher Lee was Dracula.
Unofficial Doctor Who.
Oh.
He was a human, last name Who. He's a doctor, Dr. Who, built a time machine in his backyard, and then recreated 2 episodes that they didn't have the rights to. Anywho,
Austin likes Doctor Who.
It's a good show. Those are weird Peter Cushing movies. Anywho, Harrison Ford is something that's so interesting in especially Star Wars, and not as much Empire Strikes Back because then everyone's on the same wavelength, where he is changing kind of the pacing of the dialogue. I think Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher both do a very, very good job, but they are like, my turn to speak, here's my line. He sometimes just unexpectedly will pause like mid-line, pause when you think he's supposed to start his line, or just kind of trail off.
Yeah.
That makes him feel so unique and a bit more dangerous is too strong a word, because you never think he's actually ever going to betray them. Mm-hmm. Like, we all know he's going to come back at the end. It's always great when he shows up at the end. Mm-hmm. Like, because he is the scoundrel with the heart of gold.
Right.
And there's something just fun to watch a performance like that, because you're watching Harrison Ford. I think as we're going to rewatch these films, he's just weirdly naturalistic, and perhaps his naturalism is a detriment when he
is bored,
doesn't give a shit, which is half his films, which is probably higher than that, actually.
Well, I mean, Harrison Ford is the individual. At some point, it became about the money for him.
Oh, sure.
Probably very, very early.
Yeah, 80s.
and I think, and I read this somewhere, and I'm not positive about this anymore, but as of like 2001 or 2, he'd made more money being an actor than any human being in history, and that's including
2002.
Yeah. because he played Indiana Jones and he played...
Oh, what, you know what? I think I told this. I think he was up there. I think Samuel Jackson was high.
Past him.
Past
that's
him?
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And then later, Samuel Jackson passed Harrison Ford.
Because, I mean, then Samuel Jackson had Star Wars.
Right.
And now he has Marvel.
But here's the difference there is that Samuel Jackson's in, like, 5,000 movies.
Oh, yeah.
That guy's in every single movie. Harrison Ford actually doesn't act that often. At least not anymore.
Well, that's why it's so
And he
curious.
had Indiana Jones in Star Wars.
They just announced that's Spielberg's going to do West Side Story and then Indiana Jones 5.
Yay. Getting back to Star Wars.
I think it's going to be like a Star Trek thing. All the odd ones are good.
Okay. Well, see that, but I like Templeton. But I digress. We're not talking about that now. We don't want to do that.
That's next week.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that.
Anything else about Star Wars? You want to go
no. The thing was, the reason why, like, the end of the movie, I want to talk about the very end when they're getting their medals, right? So, like, this is how I'd like to transition to Empire. So, like, what you end up discovering, particularly when you get to see it come to fruition in Empire Strikes Back, is there is a trajectory for Han Solo that is going somewhere. You know, you have Princess Leia being Princess Leia, becoming more of the guerrilla fighter or whatever. It's less clear. She ends up being kind of Luke's sister ends up being her big claim to fame, is kind of what she goes to, if you're not counting the new films. Han Solo moves to being this scoundrel, petty scoundrel, to a rebellion general. That's his transition.
Yeah.
Luke is obviously farm boy to Jedi. So, like, the transition here of the end of the film being where this guy who is a scoundrel ends up being a hero of the Republic, and you got him and Luke in the throne room with Leia putting the medals on him, it's literally a perfect ending.
I never kind of thought of the parallel, but David Crockett, right?
In what way?
I mean, this is a guy who was, his own man, kind of independent frontier man who ends up being a hero of the Alamo.
Yeah, I guess so.
He's the kind of guy who went to Washington and then decided, nope, I'm going to the front lines, kind of thing.
Yeah, no.
Different endings.
Yeah, different endings, but in the same way, I get you there. So he gets the medal. He's there. The crowd cheers, and it's again a very type of cliche thing. I mean, it looks like graduation. I mean, even the way the music transitions to Star Wars, it feels that way.
You know what always made it work for me? The moment, though, I never found it cheesy because
I don't think it's cheesy at all. I think it's awesome.
I think the moment when you see Carrie Fisher smile at the three of them, because she has felt the most onus as one of the biggest leaders of the rebellion. She's had the most loss in the whole film. So to see her have an actual just truly cheeks bursting smile at the end of we did it.
Well,
that sells it so well.
And it's great seeing Her Majesty in that scene, right? Because we've and I just realized she's a princess and I said Majesty, but I mean Majesty is oh my god, her aura.
Yeah.
Because we see her in the film getting her hands dirty, shooting guns, fighting with Darth Vader, having, battle of wits.
Did she take Luke's gun at one point? And
yes, and she blows up in the thing, into the garbage chute flyby. It's awesome. Yeah. And then you see her at the end of this film, and you get to see her as a princess. Mm-hmm. That's honestly, they're very formal and very, people in the times we live in want to poo-poo her being a princess, that's a bad thing. But, that's really cool for me to see her that way, because actually we don't ever see her like that ever again. Mm-hmm. She might as well had a crown on her head. That was the princess and the throne room, which is kind of neat and cool. So the transition being from Star Wars to this, and the reason why I want to tie that together is when Empire Strikes Back starts off, he's General Solo. The scoundrel's gone.
But he
still got the...
Well, because, to me, when I rewatched Empire, I was like, yep, still super fun. Yep, Hoth is great. Yep, knocked that big thing down. Super cool. Loving all this. But it was when they're just, doing their jobs, and it's him yelling at Chewie, this. First of all, we had never had overlapping dialogue before. Yeah. It feels different. It feels like a real progression, obviously not towards realism, because a giant walking robot fell down through spaceships. But it's now everyone speaks like Han Solo was speaking in the first one.
Yeah.
And that became so cool, because now you get to have, you can do things beyond the archetypes. You can have these more complicated relationships.
Well, you have to now.
Yeah, you have
sequel,
to. Yeah,
right? So.
And that, I mean, like, not every sequel can pull this off so well. So when you have him and Leia talking, it's not just like a lover's quarrel. It now has very distinct points of view and how they're speaking, how they're making decisions, and there are just different stakes going on. And Harrison Ford embraces that so well. I think like he has made the best performance in that movie just because he really does exist in this world that, like, the first movie is super fun. In fact, it's kind of a perfect film. In fact, it is a perfect film. Empire is now a movie that makes sense, and you can, like, organically have, like, subplots from, like, you can spend more time in this world that's richer, and Harrison Ford is kind of embracing the complications of it so well. I mean, you meet one of his old friends, betrays him immediately.
I love that.
So good.
I love that so much because it's an old friend of his, right? That's who he ran with.
Who has the coolest name in the galaxy?
Lando Calrissian. Oh my God, I love Lando. I love Lando.
Have you played Battlefront 2 yet?
I have not.
There's Lando level.
I know. I know there's a Lando level. It's the only way I can get Lando anymore because the new trilogy hates the old characters.
Well, they got Don Glover coming up. But we have there's a whole plot. Battlefront 2 is not very meta, but they have a few characters trying to make fun of Lando's cape, and it just passes off him. Doesn't matter. He goes, it's great.
It's a cape.
He just kind of keeps
capes are
going.
cool.
Capes are cool.
But Lando's whole plan was to. What I love about that, and we'll just talk about that. So the plan is we need to hide from the Empire. So Chewie, 3PO, Leia, and Han are like, we can land at Bespin. It's Cloud City. Lando's an old friend of mine who makes sure we're safe. We get there. Well, first thing Lando does is pull a prank where they pull guns out on him, which, hilarious. And then you find out, I love the little nuances, the little nuggets you start getting, that the Millennium Falcon was originally Lando's.
Yep.
And then Lando immediately hits on the princess, naturally. But the plan, the Empire got there before they did. And they don't know that. Lando's not really betraying Han. He's now reformed himself, too, right? He's got responsibilities. He's the administrator of this operation they got going on.
I mean, he's a government lackey. It's just a super evil government.
And he doesn't know who the fuck Luke Skywalker is.
No.
So, which is awesome. Because he's like the first character since he's come in. It's like, he didn't know who Luke Skywalker is. So, when he says, oh yeah, this will lure in some guy, Luke, to come here and save him. They'll capture him. My buddies will be free. That seems like a good deal to him because he doesn't give a shit about Luke Skywalker. Yeah. He cares about his buddy Han. Sure. And that dynamic plays out really well because it's such... Once the Empire makes themselves known, the Darth Vader's literally in the throne room, and by the way, Han Solo shoots at him with a blaster, which is awesome.
Han moment ever? You open the door and go, oh my God, Darth Vader. Because it's not only shocking that he's there plot-wise.
Did you join us for dinner?
He is all black in a very white room, and Han shoots him.
Yeah, his first reaction is immediately do that.
Because if you see Hitler, take a shot.
Yeah, exactly.
You're probably not going to turn out well anyway.
Yeah, that's true. And so, like, this happens.
He blocks it with his hand.
He blocks it with his hand, and then he pulls
which we've never seen before, right? At that point, blocking both their hands.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I think that's what's kind of crazy about these films when you go back and watch them, because how evolving the Force kind of was.
Yeah.
Because, like, no one knew how the Force worked. Every movie had new roles.
Everything on Dagobah is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep going, oh, right, he does see Ghost Vader crazy dream thing happening.
Or he's just lifting a rock with his mind.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we think like it's we know that now because we all know the Force now because it's such a big thing in pop culture, but kind of weird.
But I love that it's still expanding too.
I'm tired of it expanding. Let's just it's at a point now where I don't think it can expand any further. You can pretty much do anything with the Force.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny how
you can already control people's minds.
As the numbers kind of go up, more possibilities. Numbers go down. It's science. It's midichlorians.
No, I'm just
it's kind of a weird different ways you can go with this.
I'm at a point of the Force now, is why do you need stormtroopers? Literally, if you can do all this stuff with the Force, just control everyone you see's mind and make them part of your army. Because why not? That's the next step with the Force at this point.
Don't spoil episode 9 for me. I'm looking forward to this.
Anyway, so getting back to what I love about that situation on Bespin is it's a constantly evolving situation. Every time we go back to Bespin, there's one or Cloud City, there's one more new nugget. It's like 3PO gets blown up, Han's being tortured. Now Luke arrives, and it just the stakes keep changing, and as they do, you get to see these characters bounce their emotions off other characters in ways we haven't seen before. And this is usually accented through Han Solo, because he's behaving incredibly heroically.
And this is, to me, perhaps a flaw of another 5-star film we're talking about here. I've always struggled with Luke abandoning his training. Because emotionally, when I watch these sequences, I still keep feeling that they got it. I always feel like, Luke, you're not needed. I know it looks bad now, but in a moment, Han's going to shoot the right people and it's going to be fine. Ultimately, we know it doesn't turn out well. He gets put in carbonite. But just the way that it's filmed, I just kind of always feel, and the confidence of Han Solo and the evolution of Han Solo and Harrison Ford taking a real leading man role for half the film, I never felt like, Luke, don't skip your senior year. I'm gonna need that later.
Well, in the new Star Wars, then you should hate that.
Well, they did it again.
Way worse, because she only spends one day with Luke Skywalker.
And yet, emotionally, I was ready for her to leave. It's a weird thing.
Then why even go there?
We're not talking about that movie.
I know, but I'm just saying. But they do the same thing.
And it really worked for me more than that one because I don't know. The new one had moments where I saw things falling apart because Cloud City was just so new to me. I'm like, I don't know what's in this trash compactor thing.
I think Luke's allowed to make that mistake. I feel like
I still think it's a great choice.
What I'm saying is if Luke, it's a way worse movie if Luke doesn't go.
Oh, I'm saying he should go. I was always when I was a kid, and even rewatch him, do you need to go? I'm thrilled that you are not doing the typical kind of what was in the prequels, boring ass Jedi stuff because they've sure sit in chairs a lot and just let Palpatine rule.
They do.
He is just getting an army, isn't he?
I've never heard it put quite that way, but that is true. It's man, this Palpatine guy. What
what? We have our chairs? Nope. Hey, who bought all those clones? Not gonna look into that.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck, no more Jedi.
Yeah.
We're down to 2.
So I like it. I like I like that move there. I like him going there, and I like them going through that. And of course, it sets up that incredible confrontation, which is, people say it's best moment in Star Wars, and I'm aware that this is by slimmest of margins, people's probably. If you took a straw poll, Star Wars films, Empire is usually number one. I think we had it's number one on IMDb above the other ones, but I think we saw, that's obviously very volatile, but what was that thing we saw that had you had me go through a Twitter thing that had
this was a podcast called Film Spotting, where they did a Film Spotting Madness, March Madness bracket for their Pantheon films, which ran in 2017.
And Empire Strikes Back made it to the Final Four.
Star
Wars was in it, and it got eliminated
pretty early on.
Yeah. So Empire. I think people kind of lose the perspective on this a little bit. That this film is seen as a pantheon of not just a great Star Wars film, but one of the greatest films ever.
Oh, it's incredible.
And that confrontation between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker at the end, towards the end of this film, is never ever going to be done again. No. It's literally one of those moments where he says, "No, I am your father," that is quite possibly the most shocking sequence in film history.
Sure.
Which, the emotion and the inertia after that moment, particularly after we just think we've lost Han Solo, raises those emotional stakes to a completely different level that I don't think people realize these Star Wars movies were capable of going to. You could say that Star Wars, the original one, is more clean and crisp and focused, and that's probably true, and by all rights, maybe a better movie than that. Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, is way more grandiose and goes into territory that the first Star Wars movie would have been completely crushed and bogged down by.
And there is still, because I mentioned before, but Empire, and circling back to Harrison Ford, Like, he gets frozen in carbonite. Still don't know what that word means, carbonite. It's
a thing.
It's cool. They just have all these like little like nuggets in this movie that really kind of makes it have more texture to it, makes it feel more real. I love that they mentioned in the movie that this is their first time even testing this out. Mm-hmm. Like, this can be a cool thing to transport things, or we can use it on the fucking asshole who owes Jabba a ton of money.
Yeah.
Like, it is like, oh yeah, this might just kill him. Mm-hmm. And that moment is just another element of like, you're already fucked, and I could be even more fucked. And so, I mean, this is where we got to end this up, right? Is the final Harrison Ford scene of these two movies. You got the famously improvised line of "I love you, I know,"
which is great.
Perfect thing. He looks upset.
He does.
He looks upset, and I mean, his final pose is one of fear.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like crossing his arms or like hands in his pockets. He's in pain. He's in pain, and it's a moment where you kind of go, oh, if you never left Tatooine, you wouldn't be like this. How much good did you do to kind of get to this point? Was it worth it? You're now a prop in a disgusting slug's office.
It's a great thing to point it out, because I never really looked at it that way. But he has that dialogue with Chewie where he tells him to calm down. Hey, there'll be a time to fight. Like after this, and then he steps up there and has a dialogue with her. And you're right, he's
going to die.
He's frightened. Yeah. I mean, he assumes he's going to die in the. And I mean, Harrison Ford famously wanted Han Solo to die in this film. I'm glad they didn't. Because I like him in Return of the Jedi, even though I don't think he's good in it. But I like that film. But also I like his ending in Force Awakens.
Me too.
It's shame that went off the rails, but
into a new, bold, great film.
Yeah, but I just I can kind of see where he would feel that way. I mean, that feels like the circle's complete at that point, right? He was that guy we met in that bar in Mos Eisley in the first film, and to this hero who's now going to die at the hands of the Empire. Like that's a really solid, complete arc. The only thing left for him to do is get the girl, which is the third film, which you can debate whether that's even worth that.
Well, I mean, it's something so interesting about. We got to wrap it up soon because we're doing a long episode, but it is. I mean, from here on out, spoilers for Force Awakens. I never really kind of thought that much about him as a coward in the first movie. And it is played not as like slapstick kind of way, but it's kind of a very funny way of being a coward. It's not a shameful look at a coward.
No.
And to have him...
Well, it's good having a reward if you're not around to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, right?
And Force Awakens is to see the character again essentially relapsing. He's now back to a more cowardly position where he's away from the front line as far as he can.
Part of why I didn't like that. I mean, I feel like they reset him to not have him be a general in Force Awakens, to go back to him being a smuggler kind of cheapened the original narrative to me.
I mean, I was okay with it. I mean, his smuggling scene is just not very good.
It's terrible.
But I like the idea of what would cause him to relapse like that. It would be the just complete mess of how his son turned out, and then return to the state he was, and to do the least cowardly thing maybe in the whole series is to walk up to someone he knows is not to be trusted, tendencies of evil, perhaps damaged by his best friend, yet is still his son, and he's going to go for the percentage of hope, and doesn't turn out well. It's a really sad ending for a man who spent his days hiding in stupid bars.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy that he would end up
there.
Like that.
Yeah,
I mean, they're fan fiction to me, so he didn't. But yeah.
Oh, he's dead. Also, he never existed. He's a fictional character.
Yeah, he's a fictional character on a long enough timeline. But anyway, yeah, no. I mean, there's no way to talk about like when you talk about like a pantheon of films, like we mentioned earlier. These if you're going to have that long discussion about film, Harrison Ford is inevitably coming up because he's Indiana Jones and he's Han Solo, and again those. may be the two most famous movie characters in film history.
And it's kind of crazy. I mean, we're going to see a movie this year where someone else is going to take the mantle of one of his two iconic roles, and the odds are against this person. He's going to Hail Caesar, but good luck, because, I mean, when you get the iconic things like Robin Hood, James Bond, Sherlock Holmes, you have so many actors who've played that role. And the reasons why those characters have endured so long is because we've now seen so many different iterations of them. We've only seen one iteration of Indiana Jones and Han Solo. Not saying it needs to be that way. Bravo to anyone who can be the Benedict Cumberbatch of Han Solo in the year 2050 or whatever. Like, oh, there's a new awesome take on it. But good luck, because, man, Harrison Ford, through such natural charisma and understated acting, really has concreted that into the American psyche, which in real life has clearly pissed him off. Which is delightful.
He's kind of a curmudgeon.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, you want to take us out of here?
Yeah, let's do that. If you haven't seen Star Wars, you guys should watch Star Wars. It's a good movie. But let us know what you think about Harrison Ford, Han Solo, Star Wars, any Star Wars, so many Star Wars, all those Star Wars. Go over to theartofmore.com. There we will have many podcasts, including the Immortals, which we had episode yesterday, where we featured From Here to Eternity, Talking Book, and the Richard Pryor Show. And at the end, when I mentioned this episode, you hear Pedro exclaim very loudly that we're doing Harrison Ford. So he's excited. We definitely got a good listener for this one. Also, Ad Absurdum has a new episode coming out soon. Don't know exactly when, but it's definitely in this month. Follow us on Twitter at The Immortals Pod. You can email us at letstake5@artmore.com. Where can we find you?
Constant Diversion's my YouTube channel. You can check me out on there.
Leave us a review on iTunes, and join us back here next Friday, when we're going to be discussing the equally iconic Raiders of the Lost Ark. Really wish Witness was between these two. It's not. It's chronological. We're doing this. Raiders of the Lost Ark. And if you're excited for that, can't wait, go back to episode something where we reviewed Last Crusade in relation to our Spielberg 5. Mm-hmm. So,
that wraps us up.
Until then, I'm Austin Luker.
I'm Eric Martindale.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here tells me you're looking for passage to the Alderaan system.
Yes, indeed. If it's a fast ship.
Fast ship. You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's a ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs. I've outrun Imperial starships. Not the local bulk cruisers, mind you. I'm talking about the big Carillion ships now. She's fast enough for you, old man.